Silence is not weakness. In psychology, silence is power. A quiet kind of power that doesn't announce itself, doesn't explain itself, and doesn't ask for permission. Most people are afraid of silence. They rush to fill it with words, excuses, explanations, or emotions. But the human brain reacts very differently when there is no response. When someone stays silent, a mind starts working against itself. It looks for meaning. It creates stories. And more often than not, those stories are uncomfortable. This is because the human brain hates uncertainty. Silence creates a gap, and the brain desperately wants to close that gap. When there is no reply, no reaction, no feedback, the mind assumes danger. It asks questions like, did I say something wrong? Are they judging me? Did I lose control? This is why silence feels heavy, not because it's empty, but because it forces people to confront their own thoughts. Words give relief. Silence creates pressure. When you speak, you reveal your position. When you argue, you give your opponent something to attack. When you explain yourself, you hand over information. But silence gives nothing. No clues, no emotional signals, no direction. That's why silence shifts power. In conversations, the person who speaks first is often reacting. The silent person is observing. This is not accidental. Experienced negotiators, interrogators, and leaders understand this deeply. They know that when you remain silent, the other person feels compelled to speak. They start filling the space. They talk more than they plan to. They reveal insecurities without realizing it. Silence creates discomfort. Discomfort leads to exposure. Imagine an argument between two people. One is loud, emotional, and defensive. The other says nothing. Slowly, the emotional person starts to lose control. Their voice gets louder. Their words become messy. They repeat themselves. The silent person, on the other hand, appears calm, stable, unshaken. Observers instinctively see the silent person as stronger, not because they are aggressive, but because they are not affected. Silence communicates confidence without words. In psychology, confidence is not loud, it's controlled. Silence also disrupts expectations. Most people expect reactions. They expect explanations. They expect emotional responses. When those expectations are not met, the brain feels off balance. That imbalance creates psychological pressure. This is why silence works so effectively in negotiations. When an offer is made and you stay silent, the other side often lowers their position. They assume rejection. They assume dissatisfaction. They negotiate against themselves. Silence does not need force. It lets others do the work. But here is where silence becomes dangerous. In dark psychology, silence is not just a defense mechanism. It can become a weapon. Silent treatment is a form of emotional control. Delayed responses create anxiety. Emotional withdrawal triggers fear of abandonment. When someone suddenly becomes quiet, the other person starts chasing clarity. They seek validation. They try harder. This creates imbalance. Over time, silence can condition behavior. It teaches someone that approval must be earned, that peace depends on pleasing the silent one. This is how silence turns into manipulation. That's why understanding silence is crucial. Used consciously, silence protects your boundaries. Used unconsciously, it damages relationships. Used deliberately to punish, it becomes psychological harm. The strongest individuals understand this difference. They don't use silence to dominate. They use it to stay grounded. They know when to speak. And more importantly, they know when not to. Silence is powerful because it reflects control. Control over emotion, reaction, and impulse. Most people talk to feel safe. Strong minds stay quiet to stay aware. Silence allows you to observe patterns, tone changes, body language, emotional shifts. While others speak, the silent person gathers information. That information is power. But silence is not about winning conversations. It's about protecting inner balance. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to react to every provocation. You don't need to fill every gap. Silence teaches restraint. Restraint builds authority. And authority doesn't need volume. The most powerful presence in a room is often the quietest one, because silence is not the absence of strength, it is the presence of control. The real question is not whether silence is powerful. The question is whether you know when to use it and when to break it.